Hello, Rita.
Hello, Richard.
Well, we're back again. Rita's joined me for several other podcasts, but today we're talking about jobs. Rita's joined me, if you want to check out on series 1, we've talked about spirituality, and then we've also talked about Christmas and school life as well.
Yeah.
But today we're going to cover the subject of jobs. What job did you want when you were a kid?
As a child, my dream job was to be a hair hostess.
Ah, right. Yeah, it's a job I could see you doing.
It was something back then. It seemed a really glamorous job. I mean, it's still glamorous because you see them and they're always dressed immaculate, beautiful makeup, beautiful hair. I mean, there's a lot more male cabin crews now as well, and I mean they're equally.
Is it a well-paid job?
Dress the part. I don't really know because it was something I never really followed through. So I kind of, in my later part of school, did shorthand and typing. I went on to do business study and commerce. Kind of followed that line of work and ended up being a branch manager's secretary for a company in Lincoln.
When I was younger, my mum tells me I wanted to be a chef on a ship.
Ah.
I can't think of a point where I remember saying that. Chef on a ship. I can cook okay, not so good at baking, but I don't think I could be a chef on a ship. I remember from being a young age that I wanted to sing. I was just like bemused by tape recorders and microphones and anything to do with music, record players, everything like that.
Yeah.
Just fascinated me. And I was always with a tape recorder singing to it, listening to the music from being like 3, 4, 5-year-old. And I just remember thinking, that's what I want to do one day.
Well, you are doing it now.
Yeah. Well, at school, I didn't have a clue what I wanted to do. At secondary school, when you have to sort of really start thinking about,
Yeah.
And I know you have the careers, what do you call it? The careers advisor?
Yeah.
And there was like, oh, you could do this, you could do this, you could do this. And all of it involved staying on in the sixth form or going to some sixth form college.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I've had enough of school now. I just want to get out. And I used to just say, I've got a job on my dad's farm. I hadn't really. It wasn't set in stone because it was like a big family company. I hadn't. But I left school in 1994 and went straight onto the farm.
So you did work on the farm then?
I think I left school 1 week. I had about 1 week off and then straight onto the farm. I finished my exams, 1 week off, straight on the farm. And that was it.
Yeah.
First job was pulling wild oats in a field. In a field where there was known to be snakes.
Oh, God.
Is it the adders with the on the back sort of thing?
Yeah.
It was on the moors. And this uncle of mine dropped us off, me and 2 other lads. They were both 16, both just left school a week before. And my uncle dropped us off and he said, all you do is go through, fill your bag with these wild oats, bring them and lay them on the balk, on the lane, this rough old lane. It was like, oh, is that it? He says, yeah, he says, you're going to be here all day. There was only me who had food with me. They didn't bring any food because they used to go home for dinner when we was doing like bales and stuff. So, we was on the moors. Oh, he says, just keep an eye on where you're treading. He says there's a lot of snakes. But he said they don't often come out till it's really hot. But he said you might be off. So we was walking through this field. You couldn't see where you was treading.
Oh, God.
But you forgot about it after a while. You just thought, if there's a snake, there's a snake. But luckily, didn't get bit or anything while we were there. But there was these fields. There was probably 10 fields and they were huge, sizes of football pitches.
Yeah.
And we had to walk them over a week or so, pulling these wild oats. It was quite good because you could just stop and have a rest at the end every now and again, or some of the times we just sat and talked. But they could tell where we'd been because the wild oats was less.
Yeah, yeah.
But that first day, they'd forgot to bring any food because they thought they were going to be going home for dinner. So
God.
I shared my lunch with them.
Oh.
There was a tap on this old barn, and there was an empty old farmhouse. We could get water from this tap, and they had a bottle, but they didn't have any food. And then the next job was like the bales of straw, stacking the bales of straw, and all the crappy dusty jobs on the farm in summer. And then this is the first year of leaving school, while my friends were like still at school and at colleges in a warm building. Guess what my job was? Potato time. The older ones were riddling the potatoes.
Yeah.
Now some of the potatoes had gone, some had rotted through the winter. This was like November, December time. Some had gone bad. My job was to be on the front of the tatey pile. Is it called tatey pie?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
With a basket, putting the rotten ones in this basket with a pair of gloves on. A pair of like cloth gloves.
Yeah.
And every time you grabbed a rotten potato, it just squished in your hand like snot. And then you put it in this basket. And it just stunk. Just this rotten potato smell. Putting them in baskets. And it was freezing. So you can imagine a pair of cloth gloves getting wet. How cold that felt on your hands. And then you had a dinner hour where we would sit in the van with my dad and a couple of, maybe another family member. And we'd sit there and have our dinner with the heating on. And then my dad would turn it off 10 minutes before we got back to work. Or else it'd be a big shock going from lovely warm van to freezing cold. That was my first job.
No, my first job was what I said, branch manager's secretary. And I also, within that company, learnt the admin, the accounts, the customer service. I learnt how to use a teletext machine.
Teletext?
Doesn't sound right that
No.
now.
Teletexting, that was what you got on BBC.
Yeah, no, it was television. It was like like the switchboard, and then it was a proper switchboard thing, you know what I mean? But there was a machine, and I can't think what it was called now. I suppose it was like a kind of a print.
You learned it that well, you can't remember what it is.
I know. Well, it was a long time ago. It might come to me before we finish, but...
So I think, looking back at that first job, the winter of '94, picking these rotten potatoes, looking for bloody wild oats, avoiding snakes and stuff. I thought to myself, the careers advisor was right. I should have stayed on at school. I'd be in the warm now. It was rubbish money as well, because I was only like 16. But it was a job. I had money where my friends didn't have any money, because they didn't have any work. They were just at school still, or sixth form college. They didn't have any kind of job. I had a bit of money. It weren't a lot, but it was enough to buy CDs, video tapes and things, and clothes. And then I started like permanently at the farm. And then, I paid for my own driving lessons and bought my own first car. And my friends didn't have enough money to buy a McDonald's, and I just bought my own car, through the job I had, paid for my own driving lessons. They didn't have enough to even have the driving lessons.
You see, I remember, like, my first wage packet. See, my parents, all my growing up life, had been in business. So hence when I said earlier, or I said in another podcast, that, my parents were quite wealthy. And I always remember I came home with my first wage packet, and my dad was actually in the fish shop. And I walked through and I was all cocky with, I'd got this money. And I asked my dad how much lodge he wanted, and he absolutely tore a strip out of me. to me, because he didn't want us to pay lodge.
Oh, right.
But what we did do, and this is, I suppose, looking back, we worked in the business, because they had an English and continental grocer, as well as a couple of chippies and stuff like that. So each of us, my brothers and my sister, we all did a lot of shifts, doing that. And so he was quite insulted, he said. But obviously I enjoyed the job. I enjoyed everything to do with it, but then it went, a lot of redundancies. So I ended up being made redundant. But then I kind of got married and started a family. So I was at home having kids then for quite a while, really, I suppose. And so my first job was that, and then I went on to have a family, you see. So
I think after the farm work, there were so many rubbish jobs with the farm work. I could do a whole series of podcasts about. I was useless on the farm, I'll admit it. Some parts of it, driving a tractor and tip cart, that was fairly easy.
yeah,
And you couldn't really get it wrong unless you backed into like a wall, like I did once, and split the tip cart open. But there were so many things to go wrong on a farm for somebody who's not that interested, and I wasn't. It just made it even worse. Things used to break with me. I was so unlucky working on the farm. If there was something going to break, it would break with me, and I'd get the blame. I remember just like taking some like rollers out or something, that flatten the land. They would break with me in the field, and then I'd have to bring them back. I'd only just managed to get them back to the farmyard, and I'd have to go to one of the uncles and say, they're broke, and they'd be like, oh, have they now? With you. And sometimes it was my fault they had broke, but sometimes it wasn't. But I didn't have an interest in the farm, and I think that made it even worse for things going wrong. One day, my uncle, he's not here now, God rest him. He always sort of looked after me a bit and tried to, he tried to help me a bit. And one day he said, look after the corn dryer while I have me tea. This was like 5 o'clock at night. It's a midsummer's day. And the corn dryer was this big silo thing, and it put corn through this sort of big piece of metal that dried it. He says, keep an eye on it. He says, you shouldn't have to turn it up. Keep an eye on the temperature. Anyway, I went over to this temperature gauge, just twitched it up a bit. I thought it could be warmer. It was fine, and it was probably about half an hour, 45 minutes, and then just as he walked back in, he burst into flames.
Oh, did it blow up?
This corn dryer burst into flames just as he walked in. So what does he do? Picks up this oily Hessian bag and starts beating the flames with this Hessian bag covered in like diesel and oil.
Yeah.
Spreading the flames. Anyway, I found this fire extinguisher that looked about 20 years old. It did work, and it put the fire out. But he was quite calm about it. He said, not to worry. We'll mix the burn corn in with the good corn. It singed the corn. It was black.
God.
I suppose it didn't start popping. So, yeah, there were funny times on the farm, but there was other times. When you're...
So did he blame you? Did he know you'd put it up, or did he just think...
Well, he's like, have you touched it up? I says, I might have just a little bit. He says, oh, you only have to a little bit, and it'll, be too much. So there was that, and probably a list of other things that broke. Plus, a list of other things. But I was they weren't looking to make the business any bigger. So I didn't get I didn't feel like I was totally welcome anyway, apart from my dad, and a couple of relatives. I never felt that welcome. So if you don't feel welcome, you don't really give a, you know.
Yeah.
So I didn't take it that seriously, and then that's when things break and things set on fire and you get the blame. But there was some good times, some good memories of like working with my dad. Because looking back, you know, I worked with him for all those years on the farm, you know, bedding the cows, putting the, you know, straw in the cow beds and that for them to sleep on. All that, you know, in the winter time, working together, painting machinery. I got to spend that time with my dad. You know, it was extra time. And uncles as well. Some of the uncles I worked with were really nice and got on with them. So I look back and I think, yeah, I had extra time with you when you were here. And that is a good thing about that. And then, again, school friends, Friday night, Saturday night, they were in the local pub, smoking, drinking, having fun. Where was I? Midsummer, sat on a flipping tractor, middle of nowhere, just looking at my watch, thinking, they'll be all in the pub now, you know, where am I? And it was worse because I joined a band in the mid-90s, it was 1995, and as I joined, it was the busiest time in farming growing up.
Yeah.
So they were like, are you coming to rehearsals tonight? And I would struggle to get to Doncaster for that time. I'd struggle to get there for 10 o'clock at night. But luckily, it worked out that I didn't have to cancel many rehearsals. We sort of worked around it. If I asked somebody else to do something that I was going to be expected to do, could leave a bit earlier. And plus, to get to Donny in those days, there were no 50 mile an hour. It was 60. You could get there a little bit quicker.
Yeah.
But it did hold me back a bit. While everybody else is out having fun, you're sat on a bloody tractor, middle of nowhere, waiting for a bloody combine or something.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Well, I don't, but I know what you mean. So when did you get out of that then?
Oh, late 90s. And then I went into pub work. And it's like jumping from the frying pan into the fire. Because you don't just give up some of your social free time. You give all of it up when you go into the pub trade.
Yeah.
Every night, you're there to make sure somebody else has a good social life while you're there not.
Yeah.
Unless you own a pub or a hotel. But I went from working on a farm, and I didn't do very well at maths. I went from working on a farm to working behind a bar with a till, all that jazz, machines, card machines. I didn't have a clue about working tills and card machines and stuff, and I used to get it wrong. And they'd come up, like the owners at the end of the night, they'd left me on the bar all night, and they'd come up and say, Rich, have you had a busy night? I say, well, it's not been bad, you know. It's just we've cashed up and we've took £20,000 tonight. And I'm like, how have we took £20,000? We've only had six to a dozen people in, you know, but they've all been drinking. I said, you must have been pressing the wrong thing on the till. So I'd rung up £20,000. Where we'd normally take like £120 or something.
Oh dear.
£20,000. But I hated it to start with, the pub trade. I thought it was good, just getting out of the farming and, you know, this pub. I thought it'd be like on TV, you know, EastEnders and Emmerdale and, you know, banter. But you get some really nasty drunken people, don't you? And, some people, they don't like somebody new. It's somebody stepping on their territory, you know. Yeah. Coming into their pub, behind their bar that they sit at. Just on the opposite side of the coin, though, there were some people who loved that. They loved a fresh face, a fresh, friendly face. So out of all the customers there were in this hotel that I worked at, probably 90% were really nice and friendly and pleased to see you. But there was this 10% who didn't want anybody new behind their bar and were nasty to you and
Yeah.
tried to get you to muck things up, you know. You'd open a bottle, they'd ask for a bottle of something, you'd open it and they'd go, I didn't want that one, I wanted the one next door, the beer next, you know.
Yeah. Oh,
And
I
then
know
you
what
put it on
mean.
the side and then they'd come up and say, oh, why is that bottle on the side open? And they'd go, we got it wrong, you know.
Yeah.
People love to wind you up.
Yeah.
And I think I was starting on the Monday, and I remember, like, on the Thursday night, it was a quiz night in this. It was one of the busiest nights in this hotel, and it got all the local heads in. You know,
Yeah.
the ones who'd been at work and they thought they were the local businessmen letting off steam in the evening. They were awful to me that first quiz night. I remember it as clear as day, and asking me to get drinks that didn't even exist and just taking the mickey. I remembered going in the back room with some glasses. I think I was only 18, 19 at the time. A thing of glasses. It was like a round dishwasher thing.
Yeah.
Went in the back with these glasses, putting them in the dishwasher, talking to their dog, going, oh God, what have I done, dog? What have I done, dog? Why have I got this job? But I stuck at it. And they get used to you. They get used to a new face, and they get to like you. You might not get to like them, but if you got off on the wrong foot with people, then it sticks, doesn't it?
Yeah. From sort of doing the secretary job, then having kids, I then went. A friend of mine said that I was going at a golf club, and so I went along anyway. I got in there and I did some like totally different stuff, like waitressing, kitchen.
Yeah, it's good to have a change, you know.
Yeah, quite enjoyed it actually. So I did that, and then really kind of again I went into bar work. I went to some friends, they had their own bar, worked for them for quite a few years, and then I decided one day that I quite fancied being a hairdresser.
Do you know, I do this. I think, I fancy doing this, I fancy doing that. With the bloody bar job, I wish somebody had slapped me one and said, no, don't do it. And with barbering, I wish somebody had just slapped me and said, no, don't do it. Because it's like you stood up all day. Like with cutting hair and stuff, you're mixing with people, cold, flu, you put yourself out there for everything, don't you?
Yeah. Well, I went to Lincoln Art College, and I was a mature student, and I did my hairdressing and got my City and Guilds, and then I did a little bit of mobile, and then my dad had an empty shop, and decided to have it all transformed into a hairdresser's. Prior, when the kids were little, I missed out this same shop that I used as the hairdressers, which was called Hair Plus.
So that was your dad's shop, was it?
Yeah.
Right.
But he gave me it.
What was it before then, before a hairdresser's? I can't remember. I'm not old.
We had it as a clothes shop, but my
Before?
sister and myself. Yeah, this is why I
Right.
said I'd missed a bit out. We called that Town Togs.
Town Togs, yeah, I don't remember. When would that have been? 90s or 80s?
More 80s.
I see, yeah.
Because the girls were little. And then my sister, I ran the Gainsborough one, and then my sister got a shop in Scunthorpe, and we it was the same clothes, if you know what I mean, would go off and buy stuff. Yeah, so Dad had it closed for quite a while, and then he gave me it. Anyway, I turned it into a hairdresser's, Hair Health and Beauty. That's where I met you, Richard, if you can remember.
Yeah, all those years ago.
All those years ago. Came in wanting haircuts and
late 90s.
Yeah.
Well, it was through my sister's. I think I went to my sister's one day and I said, I'm thinking of having my hair cut and having some blonde highlights put in. She says, I'll just go across the road to Rita. She says, I go there all the time. She lived opposite there.
Portland Terrace.
For about 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe more. Anyway, that was it. I came into yours and
Yeah.
I went there for years till you closed it.
Yeah, that's where we became friends. Yeah, so I did this hairdressing, and as I opened up this salon, and had that going for a number of years, and then tragically my dad died, and I decided I wanted to go in the ambulance service. So
Why not?
I applied.
All that heavy lifting of people, what can it possibly do to your back?
Yeah, true. And my shoulders.
I think
Um,
when you think about jobs, you've just got to really seriously think about the impact, haven't you, on what it has on your life.
I mean, for me, out of something bad, I decided I want to do this, and got through. Whilst I was waiting, I went to Scott Award, and went on Scott Award at John Copeland. Did a little bit of sort of healthcare assistant, that kind of thing, and then got in, and then from there I sort of went into a GP surgery.
So one thing leads to another. Well, I got fed up of the hotel. I've been there 2 or 3 years, and they asked me to move in at some point. So I moved in, which was like the biggest mistake ever, because you're there on the premises for and I used to get 1 day off a week and half an evening. I used to get from like 7 o'clock off or something like that, 7 o'clock, and the rest of one evening, and then 1 full day, and that was it. And then they said to me, finishing up, we want you to be on the premises 24/7, but we're going to, pay you more. And I thought, it's just not worth it, because I had to work at the other pub as well. So I'd come back from the other pub after doing the dinner time shift, and there was like builders doing work in the hotel, so there was paint tins and stuff to clear up before I opened, and I had about an hour before I had to open up again.
Oh, gosh.
And it was just so bad on my health. It's when I started to get kidney stones and stuff. So I left all that. I just left. And the first job I got after that, do you know, in the late 90s, when I was without a job for about 6 months, something like that. And do you know, I struggled to find anything. I applied for clothes shops, petrol stations, you name it. I applied for, and I think I was overqualified.
Oh, right.
Gardening jobs, and struggled to find anything. And then, same as you, something said, "Oh, I'd like to be a barber." No, worse than blooming farming. I don't know, it took me a while to get into cutting hair. Well, at first they have you putting rollers in. I'm like, all I want to do is cut hair. I want to be a barber, not a hairdresser. I'm not a hairdresser. I want to be a barber. Okay, but you have to do all the rollers and all this. I didn't want to do that. So again, I didn't really have much enthusiasm in it. We were there with the dolls' heads. Yeah. And I'd be there like slapping it or sticking a comb through its head and messing about with it, trying to, twist some of its hair and mess about, or cutting chunks off. And they were like, "No, you can't cut it yet." I'm like, "Oh." And I cut mine because I got bored. I cut a couple of inches off it before they said you were allowed to start cutting. And they were like, "Oh, you've been cutting yours." I was like, "Yeah, because I'm bored. I don't want to be putting rods in and rollers and doing stupid things, colouring and that." But it was interesting. Yeah, it was interesting. Yeah. Worst job I think I had. Well, I say worst, it was probably the best job, but the most boring. I worked for a security company. Now it started off just answering the phone in the office, and then they had a couple of people leave, and then it was going out onto sites, sitting in a porter cabin overnight on your own with a torch The worst one was it was on the way to Doncaster, down a green lane, then off another lane, middle of nowhere. This water treatment plant. It was on the way to Donny, water treatment plant. Just sat in a porter cabin, and if this pump went off, you had to start another pump so the village didn't flood.
Oh God!
So the local village, which was like
isolated.
It was a 5-minute drive, but this road was down a green lane and then another lane and then.
And you had to do that on your own. You didn't have like a work.
No, just on my own. You turn up. I think it was 7 till 7 in the morning.
Well, what did you do?
Read a paper. They said you could take a radio, you could take a TV, you could take what you wanted. They said you could take a friend if you wanted to sit with you, but who'd want to sit there for hours?
Well, it's somebody to talk to.
It was the most boring job ever. So, do you know, I used to just take food and just a cup of soups, biscuits and stuff. I don't eat biscuits nowadays, but back then, you just take a pack of biscuits and you could soon put a bit of weight on doing security work because you just sat about, especially in a porter cabin. And I was like, yet again, what am I doing? But it was the only work around where I lived at the time that I could get. But that was the worst job. And I think just middle of nowhere, there was some lights around this water treatment plant, but it wasn't that well lit. And you weren't really looking out for somebody breaking in. You was looking out for this pump that was going to switch off. You had to switch another one on so the village didn't flood.
So what happens if you fell asleep?
Well, yeah, if you fell asleep, to be honest, it was that cold because it was like October, November time. I used to just sit with they said keep the porter cabin door open, a bit so you can hear the buzzing of this engine. I didn't. I used to just open the door maybe once an hour and just listen. Yeah, it's still running. You know, there could have been people swimming
a bit of a
past.
rebel,
There could have been people swimming past. The village is flooding. Oh, I don't care, it's cold. But yeah, there was a kettle, there's a microwave, there was always papers. But I used to take some blank paper and just write lyrics. I used to write some songs while I was sat there. And then after that job finished, I did start writing with this guy locally. And I used a lot of the lyrics that I'd wrote while I was sat in this porter cabin.
Good then.
And actually, some of them have been some of the best, most popular work. Yeah, so I think that was the most boring but easiest job. But it's quite hard just doing an easy job, isn't it? Just you've got to stay awake for 12 hours. Well, another one was on a riverside. It was actually in Gainsborough. After the boring water treatments plant job ended, they put me to the riverside when they was doing all the riverside up.
Yeah.
Again, sat in a porter cabin, and they said every now and again just go out, check there's nobody messing about with any machinery or anything. You've got a good view from this porter cabin. You can see that way. It's had windows all the way around. They gave me a radio. If any boats came past, you had to tell them it was okay. They could come past because there was these things sticking out. You know where they built the walkways?
Yeah.
There was these things, scaffolding and that. You had to make sure the boats got through okay. Anyway, not long before I finished that job, it was like 7 o'clock one morning. No, 6:30ish. 6:15. I looked out the window, I thought, there's somebody on that digger. There was like a digger. I thought, who the hell's that? Anyway, I walked out with a torch, and it was one of the workers. He'd got in without me even noticing. I took a TV and I was sat watching it. He'd got in, he just walked past the porter cabin window. I didn't even know he'd come in. There was only one way in and one way out, unless you'd climbed a wall. But, it was so cold working at the side of the Trent.
Yeah.
And the river Trent was just there, and there was no fence up or anything. If I'd have slipped, I could have gone in that river.
God.
There was no fence up. There was a bit of scaffolding in places, but there were places where there was nothing to stop you going in the Trent. So that was a real cold, lonely job, working as a security guard. And then, sort of bar work and tutoring. But the worst job is, I don't know. If I had to pick a worst job, probably the farming was the worst conditions.
Yeah.
For the cold, the wind, the rain, too hot in the summer. Although, on the other hand, it was nice to be out in the summertime and to be out in the fresh air, in the sun.
Yeah.
But in the winter, on the opposite side, it was awful to be out in that cold.
I can't say really I've had any worse jobs, so I suppose I've been probably lucky, I don't know. But obviously, from what I was saying, GP surgery, wards and things, that took me into my spiritual work, and we did a podcast on my spiritual journey.
So if you want to check out that podcast, it's episode 1 on season 1, episode 1, if you want to check out spirituality and hear about how Rita got into spirituality. And
then I still run a small spiritual centre today. I still have.
Yeah, you just do it on a smaller scale.
Yeah, I do it on a smaller scale that I did. But at the same time, up to present date, I'm just about to qualify as a civil celebrant. So I've done a course with Regent's Academy and thoroughly enjoyed it, and it's reflected in my marking, with each unit, each assessment. And
so you got that light bulb moment again. I want to be a celebrant.
It was bizarre actually, because it was something I wasn't going to do, and I saw an email and I decided, I read it, and then I've never thought any more about it, but then it kept popping in my head every now and again. So then I decided to ring the company only to ask questions. I said I don't think it's for me, but something's drawing me to ringing you. And also, she said, well, if there's anything else you want to know, just ring us. Don't be frightened. Don't be frightened of ringing. I found myself ringing the next day. And it was the same lady I spoke to, and I said to her, I just don't really know why I've rung you. And she said, oh, we had a nice chat yesterday. And
I don't know why.
So I chatted a bit more, and then I found myself paying for the course. And then the course material turned up, and it was sat on my kitchen table for a week. I didn't even open it.
What star sign are you?
Libra.
Libra, really.
I didn't even open it. Then when I did open it, I took everything out of the box and had a look at it, and then it stayed on my kitchen table possibly another 5 days.
So how long has it took you from start to finish that course?
March to
22.
October.
This March?
Year. Yeah.
Wow, you've done well.
Yeah, because you had to have it done within 2 years. I suppose then you lose your money and start again paying. But yeah, I did. I actually threw myself into it quite a bit. Like I say, it like anything, the opening to it was all to do with the history and the background, and I wasn't keen on that, although I loved history at school. I wasn't keen on that, and I thought, I felt like it were dragging. But once I came through the units, I just absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. And I just spent a lot of time at that table in there and at my laptop, thoroughly sort of researched a lot of stuff, went above and beyond, and like I said, it's reflected in my grades. So I'm more than happy with myself. It's getting going now, sort of.
So if there was one job that you could choose, that you could have, that you could do, and you could have done maybe all your life, what would it have been?
I don't know, because I am a hands-on person, although I do like studying, but I do like hands-on. So obviously I enjoyed the ambulance service, because although there's a lot of studying, I liked the hands-on. I liked that side of being with people. I am a people's person.
Yeah, I think it is nice to work with people, and I think every job has its good and bad points, doesn't it? You know, that the hotel, the pub, the bar, you do get to speak to people, but sometimes you can do that too much. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes you don't want that, do you?
I think with that job, no 2 days were the same, you know, and I suppose that's kind of a bonus in a way. And I suppose, you know, I can actually say that I've been with people of all walks of life in that sort of job as well. You know, I am a team player. I can do things on my own, but I'm equally a good team player. So, yeah, I don't know. I think that was what I like. I felt like I was doing something worthwhile doing that. So.
Yeah. So I think we've covered the good, the bad,
and the ugly,
and the uglier side of jobs. Yeah, for me, the rotten potatoes. That'll be 30 years ago next year that I was picking rotten potatoes from a potato pile into a basket with a pair of wet cloth gloves.
You see, now you'd probably have
rubber gloves.
Industrially type, you know, like.
Yeah, pair of clothy wet gloves, that's all they gave me. All day. At least it was slightly a degree or two warmer in the potato shed, even though the doors were wide open.
Yeah.
Probably a degree to, you know, probably a little bit warmer than being stood outside on the potato riddle. Well, actually, some of the jobs on the farm seem to go quite quickly, you know.
Yeah.
If you was hoeing sugar beet, by the time you've gone to one end of a row and then back, that could be like an hour. Or, you know, 45 minutes to go right to the end of a row, hoeing them out, and then all the way back. It would be more than half an hour, you know, to do that. And you've only got to do that a few times, and, you know, it's soon sort of home time.
Yeah.
Because if you was doing a very manual job, you always finished earlier. You know, 4:30, 5 o'clock. If you was hoeing sugar beet or doing the bales, you wouldn't work much past sort of 6 o'clock, 7 at the latest. Sometimes an earlier finish. But if you were doing like a tractor job, you was expected to stay later because you were just driving about, you know. So yeah.
Was it harvesting? Oh no, what was it? What's the summer months were the worst, weren't they, for farmers?
They were the busiest ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like in the summer, we didn't really get to see Dad much when we was kids because he was always on the combined, pea viner. The winter months were quieter, but they had the crappier jobs, you know, the jobs in the cold. Yeah, so yeah, it's nice to reminisce back on jobs we've had. Anything else you want to add before we finish this podcast?
No, I don't think so. I think we've covered a few things. I suppose we've both had different ends of the scale with work, haven't we?
I think I missed out.
Apart from hairdressing and barbering.
And bar work, kitchen work.
Oh yeah, bar work, yeah.
I think like I was told I wanted to be a chef on a ship. I can't remember that, but I think if I could have chose, I would have been from like a teenager. If I could have been, I'd have been in a band or, you know, like on TV or a famous band. Yeah. I came very close once. It was 1995. I sent a demo to Massive Management. The managers of EP7, Pet Shop Boys, Lulu, people like they've managed
Yeah.
and produced their records as well. Massive management. They've worked with big stars like that. I sent a demo to them, just a tape of me singing with guitar, a friend playing guitar. Within a couple of days, they were ringing up, leaving messages on the phone. We had an answering machine. Can you call us straight back? We want to speak to you. We want to see you. I was 16. I don't think I even drove yet. Yeah, it was winter, early 16. Rag 'em back. We really like your voice. We really like your look. Can you come in and see us? I was like, yeah, of course I can. Going to get a train down to London and that. I was planning it all in my head. The train, my dad taking me to the station. Off I was going to go get in this band. It was for a band.
Never come back.
It was for a band called North and South. Now, if people Google that, they were quite big for about a year. So this is all going around in my head. And then she says, just bring your guitar with you because we want to see you play guitar as well. And I was like, well, I do play guitar, but not that well yet. I'm still sort of learning, basically. I said it was a friend playing the guitar and I was singing. She said, oh, well, the place in the band is for a singer, guitarist. She said, we do have a lead singer, but there were, some singing, but the place is for a guitar player. Do you play it well enough? I said, no. I couldn't play a song. I couldn't read music well enough to play a song. So she says, I'm really sorry. I'm going to have to say no. Just get a drink. She said, we're going to have to see. We've got other people to see. I'm really sorry, but I'm going to have to leave it there.
Oh.
So that was I was so, not heartbroken, but it was awful. I was up there thinking I'd got a place with this fantastic management company. And then it was just dropped in seconds.
So did you not think that you could have done it when you got there? Was you no?
I couldn't have played guitar. They couldn't have given me some sheets of music and said, right, play this song. I'd only been learning about a month or so, 2 months. I was literally plucking at the chords, and I didn't know it well enough. I didn't know how to play guitar well enough. And it's not something I've ever stuck with and picked up really since. So, yeah, that was a big letdown. So, yeah, I think, if that would have happened as a kid, that would have been when I was 16. If I'd have got into that band and then it had led on to other things. But they only lasted about a year. They had a TV programme called No Sweat. And they released an album called No Sweat. And they had quite about 4 or 5 songs in the charts. And every time
North and South?
North and South. If you put North and South band...
I'll probably recognise the music then, wouldn't
Now,
I?
the guitar player, who was my place that he stole, he had green hair. He was a vegetarian, so we had that in common. So, yeah, that was my ideal job. But I missed out because I couldn't play guitar well enough. So, I think we've covered everything. Thank you for joining us in this podcast. Thank you again, Rita.
Thank you.
You've joined me for a few episodes now,
Yes,
and you're going to be joining me for more in the
quite good.
future. Please check out our other podcasts on season 2 now, and if you haven't heard season 1, please go check them out. Thank you for joining us. Bye for now.
Bye for now. Bye.